Is Anthony Stolarz' time in Toronto already over before it even truly began? That's the question hanging over the Maple Leafs organization like a dark cloud as their $2 million investment sits on a conditioning stint with the Marlies, watching two other goalies steal his spotlight. Think about this for a second, folks. A guy who led the entire NHL with a .925 save percentage just last season, who signed a 2-year deal in the summer to be Toronto's answer in net, is now the odd man out after just 13 games. How does that happen? How does a proven commodity go from championship pedigree with Florida to trade bait in less than half a season? Here's where this story gets absolutely fascinating and frankly a little heartbreaking. Stolarz hasn't suited up for the Leafs since November 11th against Boston. That's over 2 months of watching from the press box, rehabbing an upper body injury that's kept him sidelined while the hockey world moved on without him. And during that time, something unexpected happened. Joseph Woll remembered how to stay healthy, and Dennis Hildeby showed he's not just organizational depth, he's a legitimate NHL-caliber goaltender who can win games at this level. Now Sportsnet's Nick Kypreos has thrown gasoline on this fire by listing Stolarz on his latest trade board, suggesting Toronto could explore moving him if he performs well upon his return. But here's the cruel irony that should make every Leafs fan nervous. Stolarz has been terrible this season when he's actually played. We're talking .884 save percentage, 3.51 goals against average, numbers that would get you run out of town in a market like Toronto. Those aren't backup numbers. Those are send him to the AHL permanently numbers. Yet teams around the league aren't looking at those 13 games. They're looking at his body of work, his track record, his championship experience with the Panthers. The Maple Leafs find themselves in a goaltending paradox that would make your head spin. They have 3 NHL-caliber goalies, but only 2 roster spots. They have a guy making $2 million who can't crack the lineup. They have a waiver-exempt prospect in Hildeby who's forcing management hand with strong play. And they have Craig Berube, a coach with no timeline, no urgency, just watching this situation simmer while the trade deadline approaches like a freight train. Let's dig into the numbers that tell this complicated story, because context is everything when evaluating whether Toronto should pull the trigger on a Stolarz trade. Last season with the Panthers, Stolarz posted a .925 save percentage across 27 appearances. That wasn't a fluke. That was elite goaltending on a team that went on to win the Stanley Cup. When Toronto signed him to a 2-year, $5 million contract in July, the plan was clear. Pair him with Woll to create a 1A/1B tandem that could finally solve the franchise's decades-long goaltending instability. Fast forward to today, and that plan has completely derailed. Stolarz's .884 save percentage ranks among the worst qualified goalies in the NHL this season. For perspective, that's worse than struggling starters like Ilya Samsonov, worse than backup-level performances, worse than what you'd accept from a third-string emergency call-up. But here's what makes this situation so complex. Is this a 13-game slump from an injured goalie, or is this the real Anthony Stolarz revealing himself after a career year? The Maple Leafs are currently sitting with a 29-16-2 record, firmly in playoff position, but not dominant enough to feel comfortable. Their team save percentage of .901 ranks 15th in the league. Middle of the pack, nothing special. Woll has been solid when healthy with a .907 save percentage, and Hildeby has shocked everyone with a .913 mark in limited action. The chemistry is working, the rotation is functional, and most importantly, they're winning games without Stolarz. Here's where the front office calculus gets really interesting. Stolarz carries a $2 million cap hit through next season, which isn't crippling, but isn't insignificant for a team perpetually dancing along the salary cap ceiling. If Toronto could move him for a late-round pick or a depth piece, they'd create flexibility to address other needs. Maybe that top 4 defenseman everyone keeps talking about, maybe a gritty bottom 6 forward for playoff battles. Teams desperate for goaltending like Carolina, Colorado, or even Edmonton might take a chance on Stolarz's pedigree despite the ugly numbers. But let's play out the nightmare scenario that should terrify Brad Treliving. What if they trade Stolarz? He goes to another team, rediscovers his form, and posts a .920 save percentage down the stretch, while Toronto's goaltending falls apart in April? What if Wall's injury history catches up to him again? What if Hildeby hits the rookie wall? Suddenly, you're in the playoffs with a 23-year-old AHL call-up as your starter, watching your former goalie backstop a Western Conference contender. That's the kind of move that gets general managers fired and haunts franchises for years. The conditioning stint with the Marlies is essentially an audition for Stolarz to prove he's healthy, for Toronto to showcase him to other teams, and for management to buy time while they figure out what the hell to do. Berube's refusal to provide a timeline is telling. It suggests internal debates are ongoing, that no consensus exists on the best path forward. So, where does this leave the Toronto Maple Leafs as we barrel toward the March 7th trade deadline? They're sitting on a goaltending asset that's simultaneously valuable and damaged, proven and unproven, necessary and expendable. The smart play, the conservative, risk-averse organizational decision, would be keeping Stolarz as insurance. Playoff hockey is a war of attrition, and having 3 capable goalies is a luxury most contenders would kill for. Think about Tampa Bay's back-to-back cup runs. They had Andrei Vasilevsky, but they also had depth that saved them when injuries struck. Think about Vegas last year, rotating goalies until they found the hot hand. Championship teams don't trade goaltending depth in February. They hoard it like gold because they know April is when everything breaks down. But there's another perspective here that's equally valid. If Stolarz looks good in his conditioning stint, if he posts a couple of shutouts with the Marlies and reminds everyone why Florida trusted him in big moments, his trade value will never be higher. A contending team facing a goaltending crisis might offer a second-round pick or a useful roster player. Assets Toronto could immediately flip into addressing their defensive needs or adding playoff-tested depth. The Hildeby factor cannot be ignored in this equation. He's 23 years old, he's waiver-exempt, and he's shown he belongs at this level. If Toronto believes he's their goalie of the future, then keeping him in the NHL to develop makes more sense than stashing a 32-year-old journeyman who might not be here next year anyway. Youth and potential often win these organizational debates, especially for a team that's trying to balance win-now urgency with long-term planning. My prediction? Stolarz plays 2 to 3 games with the Marlies, looks competent but not spectacular, and Toronto holds on to him through the deadline as insurance. Then, in the summer, they'll revisit this decision when the pressure is off and they can make a calmer evaluation. But if a team comes calling with a legitimate offer before March 7th, don't be shocked if Treliving pulls the trigger. This front office has shown they're not sentimental about roster decisions. What do you think, hockey fans? Should the Leafs cash in on Stolarz while they can, or would trading him be the kind of short-sighted move that comes back to haunt them in the playoffs? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I want to hear if your team keep the depth or team sell high and upgrade elsewhere. And if you're enjoying this deep dive into Leafs drama, smash that like button and let's keep this conversation going. The trade deadline is coming fast, and Toronto's goaltending situation is about to get a whole lot more interesting.